What would you do if, one morning, you stepped into your favorite cafe, ordered a coffee, and suddenly became the main character in a crime thriller, without doing a single thing wrong? That was exactly how my day took a turn for the absurd. I had no grand ambitions that morning, no plans to disrupt the universe, no schemes to cause chaos. I just wanted a damn latte. That's it. A simple morning, a moment of peace before the world demanded my attention again. So I did what I always did, got out of bed, showered, grabbed my backpack, and walked down to the little cafe on the corner, the one where the barista knew my order before I even said it. It was supposed to be easy. It was supposed to be normal. Except it wasn't. Because the moment I stepped inside, I felt it. That look. Her look. Some people glance at you with curiosity, others with indifference, but this woman, this Karen, looked at me like I was a suspicious package left unattended in the middle of an airport. The kind of stare that drills into you, calculating, dissecting, searching for some invisible threat that only she could see. I didn't need a second guess to know exactly what was happening. I'd seen it before. I could recognize the signs of a paranoid suburban warrior from a mile away. The short, over-styled hair, the permanently pursed lips, the way she clutched her handbag like a shield. She was the kind of woman who probably spent her days calling HR to report the disrespectful tone of a cashier or demanding to speak to the manager about the softness of a restaurant's bread rolls. And now, apparently, she had decided I was her next problem. I did what any sane person would do, I ignored her. I refused to let her ruin my morning. I walked up to the counter, ordered my large latte, then took my seat in the corner, pulling out my phone. A text from my mom lit up the screen. "Are you coming home for lunch today? I'm making rice and chicken." A normal text from a normal mother, asking a normal question. But apparently, Karen didn't like that. Because when I glanced up from my screen, I realized she was still staring at me, except now, her expression had changed. It wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was fear. And then, without a shred of subtlety, she grabbed her phone and started furiously typing. It started with frantic typing. At first, I thought maybe she was just ranting to a friend, maybe texting her husband about how the barista dared to serve her coffee at a temperature that was 1 degree too hot. But then, she glanced at me. Then back at her phone. Then at me again. Her fingers flew across the screen in a blur, like she was relaying some national emergency. I still held on to the faintest hope that I was wrong, that this wasn't about me. Maybe she was arguing with her HOA, maybe she was live tweeting her frustration at the coffee shop's Wi-Fi. But then, she did something that erased every last doubt. She lifted her head, squared her shoulders, and spoke loud enough for half the cafe to hear. "Yes, I'm here right now. He looks very suspicious. Big backpack. Acting weird. Kept looking at his phone like he's waiting for something." I nearly laughed. That's what she had? That was the crime? Using a phone and carrying a backpack? By that logic, half the customers in here should be in federal custody. I could have confronted her. I could have called her out, made a scene, demanded to know what exactly she thought I was doing. But I knew better. Confrontation was exactly what she wanted, something she could twist into a melodramatic tale of how she barely escaped. No, I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. So I went back to my coffee. I refused to play my assigned role in whatever deranged action movie she had running in her head. But then, I heard them. Sirens. I turned my head just in time to see 2 police cars pull up outside. Doors flung open. Officers stepped out. Hands rested near their holsters, not drawn, but ready. The way they moved, the sharp glances, the hushed words between them, they thought this was real. And Karen? Karen was glowing. She sat up straighter, a smug little smirk creeping across her face, as if she'd just single-handedly foiled a major terrorist plot. She locked eyes with me, and I could see it, clear as day. Victory. The door swung open. 2 officers stepped inside, scanning the room like they expected an ambush. The older one, Officer Mitchell, looked tired before he even started. His younger partner, Officer Carter, was more alert, his gaze flickering between me and my backpack. Karen wasted no time. "It's him," she cried, dramatically pointing my way. "I told you. He's been acting so strange, I was scared for my life." I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just sipped my coffee. Mitchell sighed, already looking like he regretted responding to this call. Carter, however, was still in full, potential threat mode as he approached. "Sir," he said, keeping his voice controlled, "I'm going to need you to stand up slowly and show me your hands." I could have argued. I could have told them this was nonsense. But arguing wasn't an option, not for someone like me. I knew how these situations could go. So I did what I had to do. I set down my coffee. I raised my hands. I stood up slowly. Karen gasped, as if my very movement was proof of my guilt. "See? He's tense. He's acting nervous," she shrieked. "Unbelievable." Carter kept his eyes on me, trying to read my expression, while Mitchell turned to Karen, already out of patience. "Ma'am, what exactly did you see him do?" She didn't hesitate. "He's been looking around, checking his phone, like he was waiting for someone. And that backpack. Who carries a bag that big unless they have something to hide?" Mitchell blinked at her. Then at me. Then at my standard-sized backpack sitting on the floor. I took a breath, keeping my voice as even as possible. I was answering my mom's text. She wanted to know if I was coming home for lunch. The officers exchanged glances. Mitchell already knew this was a waste of time. Carter wasn't so sure. "Would you mind if we checked your backpack?" Ah, there it was. The moment where I had a choice, but not really. Legally, I could say no. But a Muslim man refusing a police request in the middle of a tense situation? Yeah, I might as well have asked for a personal invitation to the back of a squad car. I sighed, bent down, and unzipped my bag. Laptop. Charger. Book. Jacket. I placed each item on the table, one by one, letting them see for themselves. Carter inspected everything. Then looked at his partner. Nothing. But Karen wasn't done. "And you're not going to search him?" she demanded, shifting tactics the moment the backpack yielded nothing. Mitchell finally gave her a long, exhausted look. "Ma'am, having a beard isn't a crime. I swear, I heard someone in the cafe choke on their drink." Karen turned red, not with embarrassment, because people like her don't feel shame. No, she was red with rage. I thought that was the end of it. Thought maybe, finally, Karen would give up. But then, she did something so insane, so completely unhinged, that I actually froze. She pointed at a random customer, a Middle Eastern man quietly sipping an espresso 2 tables away. Him too. They're together. I saw them looking at each other. The man nearly dropped his cup. What? I don't even know him. I stared at her in disbelief. She was so determined to be right that she was now dragging random strangers into her delusion. The cafe was silent, everyone watching this unravel, everyone realizing Karen wasn't scared. She was just on a power trip. Mitchell had officially had enough. He waved Carter off. "We're done here." But Karen wasn't. Because suddenly, she lunged forward, and grabbed my backpack. It happened so fast. 1 second, I was standing there, trying to process the absurdity of Karen randomly pointing at another innocent customer, and the next, her hands were on my backpack. I felt the tug, sharp and desperate, as she yanked it toward her, her breath coming in short, frantic bursts like she was single-handedly stopping a national security threat. "This is evidence," she shrieked. "You're just going to let him walk away with it?" Officer Mitchell reacted first, stepping between us before I could even move. "Ma'am, put that down." Karen clutched the bag tighter, her knuckles going white, her eyes darting between me and the officers as if daring them to stop her. "You don't understand. There's something in here." "I know it." I could hear a few cafe customers gasp, not out of fear for their safety, but out of sheer disbelief. I kept my hands at my sides, forcing myself to stay calm, but my patience was hanging by a thread. "Ma'am," Officer Carter cut in, his voice sharper now, "that is his property. If you don't let go, you'll be the one committing a crime." Karen's nostrils flared, her entire body trembling, not with fear, but with frustration. She was losing control of the situation, and she knew it. Finally, with an exaggerated huff, she flung the backpack onto the table like she had just thrown a grenade to safety. It landed with a dull thud, nothing inside shifting in any way that suggested even the slightest bit of danger. Officer Mitchell sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose like a man who regretted every decision that led him to this moment. "Ma'am," he said, each syllable laced with exhaustion, "I'm going to ask you one last time, what exactly makes you think this man is a threat?" Karen's mouth opened. Then closed. Then opened again. She looked around, searching for an audience, waiting for someone to step in and validate her delusions. No one did. The bystanders were watching her now, not me. And for the first time, I saw something flicker across her face, doubt. But she wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. She squared her shoulders, pointing at me with all the righteousness of someone who had never been told no in her life. "Just look at him," she finally burst out. "Look at his beard. Look at the way he's dressed. I trust my instincts." The silence was deafening. The barista choked back a laugh. The man Karen had accused 2 minutes ago muttered, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." And Mitchell, poor, tired Mitchell, sighed so hard, I thought he might collapse under the weight of his own exhaustion. "Ma'am," he said, his voice flat, "having a beard is not a crime." Karen's face twisted into something ugly, not shame, but pure, unfiltered indignation. This was supposed to be her moment. She had envisioned something dramatic, police tackling me to the ground, dragging me out in handcuffs while she wiped away a single heroic tear. Instead, she was standing in a cafe full of people who now saw her for exactly what she was. And she hated it. "You're just going to let him go?" she spat, as if she couldn't even comprehend the idea. Mitchell exchanged a glance with Carter. It was over. "Yes, ma'am," he said simply. "That's exactly what we're going to do." For the first time that morning, I smiled. Karen, however, wasn't done embarrassing herself. Because just as the officers turned to leave, she took a deep, dramatic breath, squared her shoulders, and bellowed loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. "I'm calling the FBI." The cafe fell into stunned silence. For a second, it was as if time itself paused. The police officers, the barista, the customers, everyone just stood there, processing the sheer audacity of what Karen had just said. Then, somewhere near the counter, a man choked on his coffee. A woman at the corner table covered her mouth, shoulders shaking with barely contained laughter. Even the barista, who had been trying so hard to stay professional, let out a low, amused whistle. Karen, oblivious to the reaction around her, stood tall, phone clutched in a death grip, eyes blazing with misguided determination. "Yes, I need to report a serious security threat," she said, her voice brimming with self-importance, as though she were a high-ranking intelligence officer uncovering a global conspiracy. "I'm at Perk's Coffee House, and there's a very suspicious man here. The local police refuse to do their jobs, so I'm escalating this to the FBI." Mitchell and Carter exchanged a look. The kind of look two exhausted officers give each other when faced with pure stupidity. Carter, finally unable to hold back, ran a hand down his face and muttered, "Oh, for God's sake." I just leaned back against my chair, watching the show. Because this was a level of Karen I had never witnessed before. Not content with calling 911 over absolutely nothing, not satisfied with grabbing my bag, accusing a random stranger, and demanding the police arrest me based on the presence of facial hair, she was now convinced that this situation needed federal intervention. And she was doing it in full view of a cafe full of people filming every second of her meltdown. Then it happened. Her phone rang. Karen froze. Her lips twitched, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through her confidence. She straightened her back and answered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, hello? I need to report." She stopped. Her eyes widened slightly. Then, just for a fraction of a second, I swear I saw her blink in actual fear. Then, the voice on the other end, loud, firm, and not amused, echoed through the quiet cafe. "Ma'am, are you the individual who just called in a terrorist threat involving a man drinking coffee?" Karen swallowed hard. But she was too deep in her fantasy to back out now. "Yes. And I demand that someone take this seriously because..." The voice cut her off. "Ma'am, we just received a report from the officers on the scene. There is no threat. You are making a false report to federal authorities. That is a crime." The entire cafe erupted into stifled laughter. I watched as Karen's face drained of color. For the first time since this insanity began, realization finally hit her. She wasn't the hero. She wasn't being thanked for her bravery. She was being reprimanded. Karen opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to make one last desperate attempt at playing the victim, but the voice on the other end wasn't interested. "Do not waste our time with baseless paranoia again." Then the line went dead. For a moment, no one moved. Then, applause. It started with one slow, deliberate clap from a man near the window. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the entire cafe was clapping. Karen spun around, face bright red, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. This isn't funny. You're all blind." "I was trying to protect you," she shrieked. No one cared. The police, done with this circus, turned toward the door. Mitchell shot me one last apologetic glance, as if to say, "I'm sorry you had to deal with this lunatic." Carter, still looking somewhat in disbelief, shook his head. "You're free to go, sir." I smiled. "Oh, I know." And with that, they walked out, leaving Karen alone, humiliated, and rapidly realizing she had no way out. The cafe was still staring at her. She hesitated, her hands shaking, phone still clutched tight like it was her last hope. Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and stormed out the door. The second she was gone, the cafe burst into laughter. The barista, barely holding it together, walked up to me and grinned. "So, another latte? On the house?" I finally laughed, shaking my head. "Hell yes." The next morning, I returned to the cafe, half expecting some lingering chaos, but the place was as peaceful as ever. No sirens. No screaming. No accusations. Just the smell of fresh coffee and the quiet hum of conversations. The world had moved on, except, of course, for Karen. By the time I sat down with my latte, the damage had already been done. The video was everywhere. Lisa Reynolds, the woman who had defended me, had uploaded the footage within an hour of Karen's meltdown, and the internet wasted no time tearing her apart. The title? Karen calls the FBI on a Muslim man for drinking coffee, gets humiliated. It wasn't just going viral, it was spreading like wildfire. The comment section was brutal. They should have at least given her an Oscar for that performance. Imagine being this determined to ruin a stranger's day and still failing. Karen of terrorism, a cautionary tale. And then came the real destruction. Within hours, someone found her name. Someone else found her Facebook. Then came the ultimate blow, her workplace got tagged. By midday, her employer had posted a public statement: "We do not tolerate discriminatory behavior. This individual no longer represents our company." Karen was fired. It was textbook internet justice. A day ago, she had strutted around like she was the gatekeeper of national security. Now, she was scrubbing every trace of herself off the internet. Her Facebook? Gone. LinkedIn? Deleted. Any trace of her former self? Vanished. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had tried so hard to ruin my life, and ended up destroying her own. I took a sip of my coffee, scrolling through the aftermath. The barista, Jake, smirked as he wiped the counter. So, looks like she finally learned how to disappear quietly. I laughed, leaning back in my chair. Guess so. The world had moved on. I had my coffee. And Karen? Well, she got exactly what she deserved. But it made me wonder, how many times had she done this before? How many innocent people had been humiliated, harassed, even arrested because of people like her? And how many got justice before the internet came along to hold them accountable? Have you ever dealt with a Karen like this? Or better yet, have you ever seen one finally get what they deserved? Let's hear your stories below.